Hi, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here today to share with you my experiences with industrial marketing. I know we only have half an hour, so I'm going to jump right into it. Adam already mentioned that I have over 16 years of experience in the industrial market. I work for Toshiba International Corporation, which is the industrial division of Toshiba. So today I want to continue the conversation about marketing to engineers that Mr. Mitra started earlier today. I hope to share with you some very practical and tactical advice on how to either create or improve your content strategy to engineers. So I want to start off by saying I'm not an engineer, and when I first decided to get into marketing and pursue a career, I thought I was going to probably go to work for some big B2C company, maybe work in an ad agency. I went to school in Austin. They had a lot of cool agencies there. And then I moved to Houston, and I took a job in industrial marketing. So obviously, it's very different. And I love what I do, but it's definitely a mind shift. And it took a while for me to understand what industrial marketing was all about. And the title of my presentation is how I became a better marketer by working with engineers. And what I mean by that is a couple of things. The first thing is it's hard to understand the industrial environment if you don't have that background. And I didn't. When I first, started learning about some of the products that I now market, they were just big boxes to me, going into a bunch of applications that I didn't get. And to be an effective industrial marketer, you really have to understand what you're marketing. And so I had to dig deep, and I had to really reach out to the SMEs and all the engineers that I work with. I work on a manufacturing facility, so thankfully I have 200 to 300 engineers that I work with that I see every day. So I do have a lot of people that I can reach out to from that perspective. But I also had to learn how to really dig deep and ask the right questions. We have a lot of SMEs in the company that understand the product, understand, the applications, understand the markets, but they don't always know how to communicate that to the people that are trying to market the product. And so really learning what you need to ask to understand what your customers are looking for. And then the flip side to that is, a lot of the product managers or your SMEs have a really good understanding of the product or maybe your customer or the types of technical content that they're looking for, but not all of them understand how to use it, and not all of them understand what marketing is. And I learned, I hear it a lot with a lot of industrial manufacturers, and it's this way in my company. The value of marketing and senior manager understanding what you do and how you bring value can be a challenge. So I had to educate senior management, educate product leaders on the value of marketing. And so marketing your marketing. And I continue to do that because, as you move into new things, which, content marketing is not so new, but for industrial marketers, it is. So anyway, those two things, continuing to reach out to your SMEs and never stop learning about it, because I'm still learning. I've been at Toshiba for 16 years, and there's still a point in looking at an application or talking about a customer where I'm like, okay, I've reached my limit, from a technical perspective. But with that said, I want to get into looking at some easy ways to create a content strategy, or if you already have a content strategy, looking at how you can evaluate your content strategy. And so when I started down this path, the first thing I did was I needed to do a content audit. And when you start to look at how you do a content audit and how you organize your content audit, it can be quite overwhelming. So this first chart just shows a simplified channel to market. And John mentioned this, you might have multiple ways you go to market. You have a lot of different verticals. You have a lot of different applications. And then you have different target audiences. And when you're trying to create really personalized, valued content for all of these potential audiences, it can turn into like hundreds of audiences, right? And then you combine that with all the different types of content marketing that's available these days. You add in, internal and external challenges that we all face with resources and, long buying cycles. And it's no wonder that less than half of us have a documented strategy. So what do? Well, Mr. Mitra said it, earlier today. You just have to prioritize and you have to start somewhere. And so for me, what worked, engineers are a really important part and a really important target audience for us. Not to say that the others aren't, but there's a statistic where like 95% of engineers have some role when it comes to buying, equipment or software within their company, whether it's specifying, whether it's a final decision maker or an influencer. And so when you're looking at creating a strategy or starting with just the content audit, it's not to say that you have to do it for every single target audience. So I started with engineers. And then I know from statistics and from surveys that engineers are using, search, just like everyone. And when they're searching, they tend to search by product, they tend to search by application. And so I just kind of, in trying to organize my thoughts and organize my content, work backwards. I also know that not in every instance, but a lot of applications can can be applied to different vertical markets. So when you're looking at where your gaps are in your content, we talk a lot about repurposing. Well, with a little bit of tweaking, you can repurpose some of your application type content into other vertical markets. And so that makes it easier than just starting from scratch. So once you kind of have an idea of what content you have, what content you don't have, then the next thing to do is to evaluate, okay, is the content I have working? Is it effective? And what new content do I need to create? So looking at, well, what matters? John talked about adding value, right? That's what it's all about, is understanding what types of questions does your target audience, what are those pain points? Reaching out to your sales engineers and understanding and looking at, the fact that by nature, engineers are looking for knowledge and they're looking to solve solutions. So looking at, what can I create and what questions can I answer about my product? And I don't mean the benefits and features of your product. I mean the product line, right? The product category in the industry, applications, the systems, providing tools that help make it easier for them to compare against whether it's products, the multiple products that you offer or the multiple products that your competitors offer, getting them pushed down into that, buying cycle to help make a decision. They're busy, and anything that you can provide that's going to make their job easier of coming to a decision or specifying a product is going to add value to them, and they're going to appreciate it. So once you have an understanding of maybe some topics and some things that you want to focus on, that's when you can start to look at, what type of content do I want to create? I think it's really important. I've heard this so many times over the years, and I'm sure you guys have too. You have people coming to you as, whether you're in Marcom or product marketing, saying, we need to do more white papers or we need to do more videos. And it's like, do you really know why, you have these quotas of needing to meet, videos so popular, let's just push out a bunch of videos every month, right? Well, you really need to focus on what value are you bringing to your audience? What are you wanting? What solution are you trying to answer? And then you can decide what type of content. So CFE Media puts out a survey yearly. They survey about 700 to 800 engineers. And this is a good example as to what kind of content engineers value. And you can see still at the top of the list is product information. Now that doesn't mean that the other types are not important. You can see that technical articles, white papers, how-to videos, these are all really closely behind, and they're all really useful to whether you're building a lead nurturing process. But product information is so important to make sure that you're at the top of your game, because if you don't have all of the types of product information that you need, then you can be missing out on engaging with an engineer that's just looking to see if your product meets their spec in the beginning. So what do I mean by product information? So I know that Mr. Mitra, again, he listed some of these things in his presentation. It means so much more than brochures and specifications. Everyone's talked about CAD downloads, 3D drawings, configurators, application selection tools. All of these things are key to a lead generation program. You might not use all of them, as part of, a lead nurturing, but I think Mr. Mitra called them sales enablers. I call them key indicators, when you'll see on the next slide, that really add value in helping, again, to solve and make the engineer's job easier. So the next thing, when you get into looking at, okay, well, how do I use this, in my lead generation program, or how do I use which pieces to push along the funnel? This is another survey by CFE Media, and what I really like about this one is because you can look online for a lot of different, whether it's like funnels, but they never just quite hit the mark for industrial marketing. And so to see these start to come out where it's very specific to engineers has been really helpful. If I'm very data driven, but having something like this that sort of validates what you're doing and what you're seeing from your analytics and how you're using your types of content, I sort of use this as kind of like a benchmark to make sure, okay, this makes sense. I am kind of on the right track, right? And the reason I circle product information is because you can see it's used all the time throughout the buying cycle, right? And if you have a marketing automation, maybe you have some marketing automation and you have a lead scoring, let me go to the next slide. I've seen a lot of lead scoring models where it might be a couple of touch points, of forms filled out, okay, it's gonna be sent to sales. And I'm of the opinion that that's not necessarily a good model for industrial. It's more complicated, right? You really have to, especially with product information, you really have to look at not only how much they're downloading, but just the bigger picture. When are they downloading it? What types of product information? Some key indicators for us are those CAD drawings, We know that, and I hear it, from our distributors, I hear it from our sales engineers as well. If someone's coming in and downloading one of our CAD drawings, then there's a really good chance that you're either being specified or you've at least made that short list. And so key indicators, and it may be different, in your industry, you have to figure out what those are. But we really pay attention to those and are careful as to when we send over those leads to sales. The other thing is also to have patience, because we have long buying cycles, and you might come in and someone might seem really active on your website, and then you just have this pause for a while, and then you sort of forget about them. And that's another reason why marketing automation tools really help you to follow these people over a long, history of time, because it may be a couple months before they come back to you. And you want to be careful, and at least from my experience, not to pass over leads too quickly to the sales force, because they'll stop paying attention to them. So the more you can, have that patience and figure out when the right time is to pass that lead to the salespeople, then the better alignment you'll have with your sales team. And then understanding your customers from a sales point of view. I think a lot of marketers get really caught up in market segmentation, and that's obviously, important and the first phase in like customer segmentation. But I think sales tends to focus on, companies or individuals. And I believe in, the industrial environment when you're looking at, okay, you might have distributors, you have reps, you have OEMs, you have system integrators, you have packagers. I mean, the list can just go on, and it's not just about lumping them in this big category. The more you work with your sales team to really understand how they target their business, what types of companies they're looking for, then that's going to create better qualified marketing leads, and you're gonna have a better conversion rate. And again, with sales feedback. So, many years ago when we started inputting leads into our CRM, we didn't necessarily require formal feedback, and sales didn't provide it. And so it was hard to understand, why did you disqualify this, or why didn't you qualify this? And so now we have, a really good, through CRM, formal feedback to help understand. And really paying attention to what Salesforce says about your leads really does drive, potential changes in your strategy and improvements. Okay, so I want to talk a minute about content. So I heard it throughout the last couple days, not just with industrial, but continuing to create content that adds value, high quality content, and continuing to find ideas and understand, what you need to be creating can be challenging. And if you're in a company like mine where you don't have a lot of dedicated SMEs to write content, the SMEs that you're going to are, they have full-time jobs, right? And so it's hard to get the focus of them to, whether you're trying to interview them or you're trying to have a conversation with them about the, what's happening with your customers. It's a challenge. So when I say find your go-to SMEs, just reach out to those in your company, whether it's the engineers or, product specialists, and find those people that you can ask the dumb questions to. Again, I don't have the technical background, so I had in the beginning I was, I had an ego. I was like, I'll figure it out, but it's really technical sometimes. And so, ask the questions and make sure that you got it right, because engineers are gonna call you on it if you're creating content that's not accurate. Question forms in CRM cases. I bring this up because we get a lot of questions, being submitted from the website, and we take a lot of technical phone calls, our application engineers, field service engineers, and we ask them to document those as cases in CRM. And so what I have my marketing team do on occasion is we data mine those questions and we data mine those cases, because these are things that our customers every day are asking about. And sometimes it's not relevant to, content we want to create or to marketing, but there are nuggets within, because they're asking likely because they can't find the answers online. And so they're having to come to us. And so it does help us to, it's a different way beyond, talking with your customers and talking with your sales engineers to understand what customers need. When I mention technical training classes and internal lunch and learns, my team sometimes has a challenge getting our SMEs to focus on creating content. And if you want, to ask them to write a technical article or to even, give you the time to interview, for me, my experience is it's more difficult, but they'll give a presentation. They give the presentations all the time. And so one thing I started to do is I started to sometimes record them. And I don't mean like even for mass, external publication, though you could do that. I meant just to capture what they're saying, that way, a content specialist can utilize it later to repurpose it into a technical article written, on the SME's behalf. It's just a nice way and a different way if you struggle with getting content from your SMEs. to be resourceful and to try to continue creating content, because you're not going to get in a slide deck really the essence and the details that an engineer is looking for. It's going to come out in what they're saying. And then the same with internal focus groups and incentivize. It really just goes back to educating and getting the SMEs in your company to understand what content marketing is, and to really just have an open conversation, because I've found it really helps, and it really helps the marketing team to continue to generate new ideas. Okay, content that engages all generations. So we hear a lot about, we have a lot of older senior engineers and a lot of the younger ones coming in, and there's definitely a difference. But I do think that there's a few things that we can consider that does engage all audiences, and not even just engineers. I think it's more of a personality thing. But the first thing is accessibility. So everyone wants everything on demand. And what I mean by accessibility is just doing an evaluation of, how much information and what types of information you make freely accessible versus what's gated. Now you saw with John, in his gated content works to drive leads and to drive conversion. But at the same time, just make sure that not everything is gated, because if you've got everything gated and they're out there searching, the search engines for you, you could be missing opportunities to engage with new customers. And educate has been a theme throughout this whole day. Don't assume that they know everything, right? That especially with the younger engineers coming in, I've heard it from trade publications, I've heard it from distributors, I've heard it from our sales team, that there's a lot of new engineers coming in and they don't understand. And especially if you have long-term customers, we had this one instance where we started to lose business from an existing customer because the engineers that understood us, that we had solved problems for in the past, they retired. And the new engineers didn't know us, they didn't understand our product. And so continuing to just educate, and then reusing the content in different ways. I already talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but also when you talk about educating, people learn in different ways. And so one thing we do, this example is like an application note, but we still provide, for those that prefer the PDF download, even though people are, the statistics show that they are going more digital, but there's other statistics out there with engineers where the top consumption preference still is PDFs. And so with that said, you have the PDF, but then you have the same type of content for those visual learners, the how-to videos. And then creatures of habit. So just be consistent. When I say don't change what's broken, make sure that, I think that there's pressure as marketers to constantly be creating new stuff and, out with the old and in with the new. But in our environment, and at least in my particular company, some of our product lasts for 30, we still have product that's in the field that's over 30 years old, right? And I still get, questions sometimes from distributors that are like, whatever happened to that piece of content from 15 years ago with this material on this product? And I didn't even know about it because I wasn't there at the time. But just be careful that you're not retiring really great assets when because they've been around for a long time. Okay, so my final thoughts, just document your strategy. If you don't have a documented strategy, it's really going to go a long way to understand, your content strategy and to be able to adjust it and to be able to prioritize. Once you have that strategy, or once you have that documented, and then you understand, the types of pain points that your customers have, and then you align those with your marketing and your business goals, it becomes much easier to prioritize. And it becomes much easier, to tell, the senior managers of the world or the product managers that are coming in saying, give me more video, or I gotta focus on this, because you can show them where the real priorities should lie. And then engineers having their own language. What I mean by that is they don't want puffery, right? Make sure that whatever content you're creating adds value, that it is, and I don't mean just a bunch of technical charts, of course, right? But make it technical enough and on their level so it's helping them. And then be resourceful. I'm just really thankful to have, to be able to be here today and share with you guys. 5-10 years ago, industrial marketing, the awareness of it was like not that great, right? And today you have agencies focused on industrial marketing, trade publications, trade associations. There's a lot of, industry associations. There's so much wealth of knowledge out there for industrial marketers than there was 10 years ago. And so I just encourage you guys to, use that and continue, your pursuit in marketing excellence. Thank you.